and the instructor. It's not a one-sided decision. It's a mutual decision. It's definitely one of the most fun experiences.
I think that was the deciding factor.
So how was that?
It was amazing. Those are a couple things you could definitely do. Just practice at the end of the day though.
So your first solo is when your dreams come true, honestly.
You started that plane, you got yourself into the air with no one there to help you. Seeing their confidence, you get excited.
Hey guys, it's Matthew from Sling Pilot Academy. Today, one of our top instructors, Christian Walsh, is going to explain what a first solo is and what it entails. After that, we'll have some interviews of some of our students and instructors at Sling. Let's get started. So, Christian, what's a first solo?
A first solo is the first time you're going to fly a plane by yourself. So not to be confused with the time when you're in the plane with an instructor. This first solo is you're the only solo on board. So it is a bit of a big deal. But the first time you fly solo, this is the first time you log PIC, pilot in command, and the first time you're going to be manipulating the plane by yourself.
So, what's required before being able to solo?
So before you can solo it in the plane by yourself, you need to make sure that you have the right endorsements and required documents. So the required documents include that you have the medical certificate and it's valid, that you have a student pilot certificate. So you obtain this by setting up an IACA account with your instructor, and it needs to be valid. You either need to have a hard copy or a certified paper copy of it on your possession. You also need to have a valid driver's license or photo ID, and then when you go to solo, that you have these on your person. This is really important, that it's not actually legal if you don't have these on your person. So once you have those and your instructor has verified that you have all the required training from Part 6187, you also need to have the required endorsements to fly solo. So there's 3 endorsements that you need. In grand total, you need to have these 3 documents on you to fly and the 3 endorsements from your instructor. So from first-hand experience, I know why this is so important to have the correct documentation. Before I came here to Sling, I flew at another school, and my instructor and I both forgot, or I didn't know at the time, and he also forgot that I didn't have one of these, and I didn't actually have an IACA account, and I didn't have a student pilot certificate. So the 5 hours that I'd flown solo elsewhere was now no longer valid, and it wasn't legal. So I had to redline that through my logbook and redo them. So I can't stress enough how important it is to go through and verify all these documents and your endorsements with your instructor before you do your solo, so you don't have to do what I did and redo that solo time. So another thing that I've experienced myself, and that you need to verify if you are an international person, that you have legal status in the country. So because I was on a visa, I had to apply for the Alien Flight School program. So you need to make sure with your instructor that you've got that set up and you've been approved for training at the flight school, and that you have done the appropriate endorsements and that you have the TSA approval. And it is quite a process, and you need to allow a little bit of time for that. But you should have already had that sorted out, because you're not legally allowed to start flight training at the school until you have the approval. But we just need to make sure that it's still valid, you're within the allotted time that you've been given for the training, and that you have the TSA approval, and you verify that with the instructor. So after you have the paperwork sorted and we know that you're legally able to fly, next thing we need to make sure and confirm that you have and verify that you have the knowledge, the ground knowledge, being the regulations, parts of the plane, being able to do a run-up by yourself, airport operations. All these things are really crucial that you have this ground knowledge before you go on to fly by yourself. You'll then do a pre-solo test. So a pre-solo test is something that Sling has gone through and created a bunch of questions. You'll go through that and do that by yourself. After you've completed the written exam, you'll sit down with your instructor and verify that you've done it all, and you'll receive an endorsement for that. Then you'll go into the practice area and make sure you have all your maneuvers down. We'll come back and make sure that you have the correct bank angles in the pattern. You keep holding your altitude, holding your airspeed, and RPM is appropriate for the position you're in the pattern. So once you've got all those maneuvers and the pattern down, we'll get you a thing called a phase check. A phase check is when another instructor, a senior instructor at the school, will make sure and verify that your current instructor, your primary instructor, has taught you all the required information, that you're up to the standard that we need you to be at to do a solo. If you pass the phase check, you'll do a final flight with your instructor. So this final flight will probably be the day you'll do your first solo. So you'll go up and do a loop in the pattern with your instructor. If you do a fantastic landing, or maybe 2, you'll then go and do your first solo. So the order of doing this is you'll actually go back to where you started up with the instructor, back at the ramp. The instructor will get out of the plane, and now you're in the plane by yourself for the first time. You'll start the plane by yourself, you'll taxi all the way down to the run-up by yourself, you'll do a quick run-up, then you'll hold short. Once you're holding short of the runway, you need to do, the required is you need to do 3 takeoffs and landings that are to a full stop. So you do full stop, taxi back 3 times by yourself.
And that whole time, your instructor is going to be on the radio listening and ready. So in case you need assistance, in case you need anything, they're going to be kind of ready and listening to make sure.
And another thing with the radios is when you're holding short of the runway, it's a good idea to tell them that you're by yourself as well. So usually you'll say holding short of the runway 29 right for right closed traffic. This time you'll say holding short runway 29 right for right closed traffic, student pilot. And when you say student pilot, the controller then knows that you are by yourself.
Some people even like to go as far as saying student pilot first solo. So then the tower knows not only are you a student pilot and by yourself, but it's actually your first time being by yourself. Where that can come into play is, my sister Jessica, on her first solo, the flaps knob came off and she had to come and land with no flaps. And she was a little nervous, and because she said it was her first solo, the tower really talked her through coming down and landing just to make sure everything went smoothly. And that can be really helpful.
Okay, so after you've done your first solo and you've landed the plane and you're back at Sling, where everyone's giving you a high five and celebrating the big moment that it is, this is the first time that you get to log PIC in your logbook. You'll do your logbook entry a little bit differently that time, so you and your CFIs sit down as normal and you'll sign the entry for the time that you did your received with your instructor. But then you also log a little bit in there saying pilot in command time, which is different. This is the first time you're ever going to do that.
Another thing to remember for your first solo is to wear a shirt that you really don't care about. And the reason for that is it's an aviation tradition on your first solo to cut the back of the shirt off. The reason for this is all planes used to be in tandem and they didn't used to have headsets to communicate like we do now. So the instructor would have to pull on the back of the shirt of the student to get them to turn in different directions. And cutting the back of that shirt signifies that the student no longer needs their instructor. So after you get the back of your shirt cut off, you and your instructor will go and write your name, the date, the runway, the airplane you flew in, and whatever else you want to remember the occasion. And here at Sling, we have a big community, so we allow you to leave your t-shirts here and put them up for display for everyone else to see.
So hi there, my name is Brandon. I'm an instructor here at Sling Pilot Academy. I've been working here since about January, and we're going to talk about sending students off solo today.
What is a first solo?
So first solo is that first experience where the student gets to go fly the airplane by themselves.
How does Sling prepare you, and what do you need to be ready for your first solo?
So Sling does a really good job of preparing our students for solo because unlike a lot of schools, we run through every single maneuver here before we send students up to solo. The other big thing we do here is we practice all emergency procedures before we send students to solo. So that way, no matter what, even if they have an emergency, which wouldn't necessarily happen, but if they did, they're prepared. And the other big thing about Sling that we do as well is we send students to phase checks, which is kind of like an intermediary test in order to make sure that the student is proficient in all the areas that they need to be in order to solo. And typically that will be with one of our more experienced instructors here to make sure that they have everything that they need to do in order to fly the airplane by themselves safely.
So when it comes to soloing, do you decide like a date in advance or no?
No, not necessarily. No, we typically try to pick a solo day when the instructor feels that the student is ready, and that's a decision that comes from both the student and the instructor. It's not a one-sided decision. It's a mutual decision when both have decided that they are both confident that the student can perform safely.
Do you have any personal tips or tricks along the way that you've used to help yourself or during your solo or your students now?
They really need to focus on transitioning not only the airplane into the landing configuration, but also transitioning their eyes down the runway. Something that happens a lot in aviation is something called target fixation, which is where a student will focus so intensely on one spot that they want to land on that they don't move their eyes away from that spot at all. And what happens is the airplane comes down and your eyes are where your plane and your body are going to go. So if you follow that same spot, it tends to come down and land hard. So I tell all my students, move your eyes down the runway. Pretend like you're going to land on the end of it, and then you'll come in nice and smooth.
Is soloing a big deal?
It's a huge deal. It is a huge deal. It's one of those things that just stuck in your mind because first off, it's a huge confidence builder because it is the first time that a student gets to experience flying and knowing that they can do it. There's nobody there to hold their hand. It's just them in the airplane. And it is definitely one of the most fun experiences. I remember mine vividly. It was very fun.
So you said you remember your first solo. Were you scared or nervous leading up to it? Like how did your emotions change as you went through it?
Oh, definitely, yes. It is definitely a nerve-wracking experience for sure because, you've only spent about however many hours in the airplane. It's different for each student. And somebody is trusting you to go fly that airplane and land it 3 times safely. It is definitely a big responsibility. But after you get the jitters out and you've moved, through your first landing and you're doing the last couple, it's like a walk in the park. It's like you've done this before. Your instructor knows that you can do it. They've signed you off to do it, and everyone believes in you. As long as you believe in yourself and you follow your checklist and do everything you need to do, then everything will go smoothly.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add?
Not other than come on down to Sling and come check out our aircraft. They're a lot of fun to fly.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, I'm Jaidan and I'm a student at Sling Pilot Academy.
Today we're going to be talking about soloing. So what is a first solo?
It's your first time flying by yourself. Here at Sling we do 3 full stop takeoff and landings on the big runway here, and it's your first time doing everything alone, so it's a big day.
How does Sling prepare you for your first solo, and also what do you need to be ready for it?
Sling does a good job with that. There's a couple of phases you go through. Day 1, you jump right in with your instructor and they kind of feel you out in your skill level, and then they kind of know what your weaknesses are going to be, so they help you get proficient in flying. And once you're at the point where you're landing the plane by yourself with no direction and pretty much doing things on your own already, your instructor might think that you're ready for a phase check, which means you sit down with another instructor here at Sling and you talk about all of the things that go into flying with kind of like a mock oral, and then you go up and you fly with them. They kind of feel you out as a pilot, and they let you know if you're ready to go solo or if there's some things you need to improve before you go up alone. Outside of that, you also take a little test to kind of test your knowledge before you do the oral, so that you know what you're a little bit less proficient on, so that you can really feel comfortable getting up there alone and flying.
Great. So what you're saying is you wouldn't really, decide way in advance when you're going to solo, book a date out in advance.
No, definitely not. You could, but you'd probably disappoint yourself, or then you'd feel pressured to go on a certain day. And as we know, like that's the last thing you want to do when you're flying is feel pressure. So
Exactly.
You'll know when it's time, and your instructor will also endorse that, and they'll feel comfortable with you going up alone. So I don't think there's anything to worry about with that.
Do you have any personal tips or tricks that helped you with anything regarding the solos, like for landings or just getting used to anything?
I would say definitely flying simulators at home just gets you super prepared.
Simulators are a huge deal.
Yeah, definitely helped me get there a lot faster than I would have without having a simulator. So definitely that, and then if you're struggling, fly with some other instructors and just take some direction from other people as well. It helps to, everyone teaches differently, and you might, if you're struggling on one particular thing, like a landing or something like that, it might help to work with someone else and get their feedback, because they might explain it slightly differently, and then you might like fix what you were really struggling on. So those are a couple things you could definitely do. Just practice at the end of the day though.
Is soloing a big deal?
I would definitely say so, yeah. It's a exhilarating experience. It's definitely something to look forward to as a fresh student in flight school. Something to motivate you to study hard and do everything you can to get up and actually solo and feel good about it. Talked to my grandpa about when I soloed, and he flew for United, and he remembered his solo from like 40 years ago. So it's a big moment for sure in your flying career, and it happens very early on as well. It could be a couple weeks or a month or so in. So it's a really cool thing to do for sure.
And you just had your first solo recently, am I correct?
Yeah.
So how was that?
It was amazing. Yeah, it was really cool. It was cool to have my instructor there, and the school is very supportive, and my class is kind of like a family, so everyone was there watching. It's a really awesome experience here. You don't feel like you're in it alone, so everyone's been supporting each other in our solos, and yeah, it's a big day anytime anyone solos for sure.
Did you get nervous at all or scared leading up to or during the solo? And then how did that change kind of as you went through it?
Definitely a little bit of nerves, it's just natural. But I think as soon as I pulled up to the hold short lines, I was like, you got to do it, you're here. So you can't be nervous, you got to just do what you know and just focus up. And everyone probably gets nervous, but I've talked to a couple other people, and right about that moment when you're right about to take off, you just shake it off and do it.
Well, great. If you have anything to add, or?
I would say just back to the pressure thing, just do it when you're ready. It's your choice. You're the pilot in command. That's your first time being the PIC. So if you don't feel ready and you feel pressure, don't do it. Just wait till you're ready, and you'll know. Like, you'll definitely know when you're ready to go.
Awesome, thank you.
Cool. Appreciate you guys.
Hi, my name is John Kaloff, and I'm a student at Sling Pilot Academy.
All right, so today we're going to talk about soloing. What is a first solo?
So your first solo is when your dreams come true, honestly. It's your first time you fly alone. You do 3 traffic pattern full stops, which is you do 3 laps around the runway, and you are the pilot in command, and it's really, really an incredible experience.
How does Sling prepare you, and what else do you need to do to get prepared for your first solo?
First, they assign you an instructor that fits you perfectly for your personality, your learning style. Also, what you have to do is prove that you're prepared and ready to fly a plane alone. So that's also something that your instructor makes sure of. And my instructor took me up, didn't say a word, made me do 3 laps, and I think that was the deciding factor that showed that I was ready for a solo. And you have to be signed off by your instructor, so you can't personally think you're ready. Your instructor has to think you're ready because it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, as well as that too, you're going through the phase checks that the school puts in place too.
Right, you have to take an oral phase check, which is just a typical conversation like this. They ask you questions about weather minimums and things to make sure that you are prepared in every situation possible.
So do you have any personal tips or tricks that you learned along the way, or things that helped you out during soloing?
One that I did was I pretended my instructor was right next to me, telling me things just to remind myself. And what I did was I spoke to myself. I did the pilot briefing to myself. I told myself, you're the pilot in command. If this happens, this is what you do. So that was what I did. Another thing is enjoy it, because it's the best experience as a pilot. You'll remember that forever. It's the first time you fly a plane alone. And that was my main thing, was just to relax, enjoy it. It's okay to be nervous. Not many people can fly a plane alone, and know that you are prepared. That's one thing that I had to remind myself the day before is, I've done it, my instructor knows I'm ready, I know I'm ready, I did really well on the oral phase check, and just enjoy it. That's my number one thing, because you do it one time. You solo once for your first time. Be focused on everything happening, because you're the pilot in command. And number one thing is enjoy it, because it's the best experience of your life.
Is soloing a big deal?
I mean, as a student pilot, I don't think there's anything bigger. It was my dream to be a pilot. Since I was growing up, I used to watch air shows and all that, and I used to think I can't wait to do it. And I think for me, that's the biggest accomplishment that I've done here. I know there's many more to come, and it is a huge deal. You're flying a plane alone, you're confident, you're happy, you're looking down, and you see your friends waving at you from the runway, and you're smiling, and you see your instructor there, and it was the biggest thing that's happened to me in my life. So
That's awesome to hear.
yeah.
You just soloed really recently. How was that experience for you?
To be honest, when I first got in the plane and my instructor, when we first started, my instructor did a few laps with me, make sure I was ready. And when he said, okay, you're gonna solo, I was like, I'm gonna solo today, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm sure. He's like, are you confident? I said, yeah, let's do it. So when he got out of the plane and I was doing my checklist, my heart rate was a little high, but I think it's normal to be nervous as a student pilot, yeah. I mean, I'm sure I think everybody would get nervous.
Oh, I was so nervous the first time.
And if you say you weren't nervous, it's probably because you flew alone before, which probably wasn't allowed to do, but it was really exciting. I had a really good time. My buddies recorded me, and I showed my entire family. All day I was talking about flying a plane alone. Right when I took off, I wasn't nervous after that, because you got to step up to the plate, swing the bat. So you have to remind yourself you're prepared, enjoy it. I loved it. Couldn't have been a better experience in an amazing airplane. So.
Hi, I'm Andrew DeClue. I'm an instructor here at Sling Pilot Academy.
What's a first solo?
First solo is the first time a student takes the plane up all by themselves. So no instructor on board, no one to help them out, it's just them and ATC.
So how does Sling prepare you, and what do you need to do in order to get ready for your first solo?
So the first 5 weeks, when he's joined us with the 0 time, is just focus on soloing. So really it's just getting comfortable with the aircraft and getting the basic knowledge that's required to solo an aircraft. So knowledge on systems, knowledge on airspace, really anything that involves safety that you need to know, Sling ensures that you have and have it down. So flight training overall is just getting basic maneuvers out of the way. It's kind of just getting comfortable with the airplane, how it reacts to stuff,
Do you choose to solo in advance? Do you pick a date?
No, it's something that just comes natural. So it's between you and your instructor. You two become a pretty good pair, you get pretty close to each other. The instructor needs to feel good, and most importantly, the student needs to feel good.
Is soloing a big deal?
Oh yeah, probably from my memories of flying, one of the greatest ones.
Yeah, I would say.
It's amazing. Like, it's that realization that you are commanding an airplane. Like, you are flying up in the open air by yourself. You started that plane, you got yourself into the air with no one there to help you.
Yeah, it feels pretty different knowing that your instructor isn't there to be able to
You have
save
no one
it.
there to help you. Like, it boosts everyone's confidence. When you do, like, with all the students that I've seen, the second they solo, their confidence just goes off the rails because they've just realized that they made all those decisions themselves. It's often overlooked, but you know, all these shirts are really important days for people.
Yeah, definitely. You said you remembered your first solo. Were you scared or nervous going into it? And did that change?
I was excited. Well, I mean, obviously you can't lie, scared and nervous. I mean, you're
Yeah.
sweating a lot and you are worried, but overall, like, having the comfort of, you know, taxiing away and seeing your instructor behind there, seeing their confidence, you get excited because you realize that you've done the training, you've worked up to it, and it's really just about not having that tunnel vision. So I was excited. I loved it.
I'm sure that 1,000 hours of sim experience helped too.
The sim does help. I can attest to that. The sim does help.
Thanks, Andrew. Hey guys, leave us a comment about your first solo experience. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and we appreciate it.